Hello, everyone. I'm going to spend a few minutes here talking about iron making. All right. As we talked about last week, farming, and your textbook had that quote about it being one of the most revolutionary development in human history. Iron making is close behind. It really was a revolutionary technology and very, very well, ways that I talked about a little bit already, closely related to farming. Um, because once you have iron tools, farming becomes a whole lot easier. Everything from forest clearance to hoeing to obviously plows if it's possible and so on. If you doubt that, go outside somewhere and try to dig a hole with a stick. Okay. Spend a few minutes doing that and then try it with something made out of iron, like a pickaxe or a shovel or something. Okay. Iron is just almost indispensable um, for a lot of tools and a lot of tasks, especially for people doing subsistence farming. Um, Pictures that I showed you last week include hoeing here, right? Okay, you can see, um, being able to do that with an iron implement makes it a lot easier. Same thing with this picture, different type of hoe, but you can see right here along the edge how it's kind of shiny right there. That's iron. Okay, so this is a wooden paddle and it just has an iron tip or blade right around the outside to make the cutting surface much more efficient. Um, Now, of course, the other thing is that historically, anyway, iron has been time consuming, hard to make, and expensive. So you're not going to have an entire tool usually made out of iron. It's just going to be the blade or a little piece of it. Of course, also, if this entire thing is made out of iron, it'd be pretty freaking heavy, right? Okay. Um, so that's why another reason why you have this classic agricultural hoe here has a relatively small blade, right? Because iron once again is expensive and time consuming to make. What makes it so? Well, we're going to go through that here in just a minute. First, a little bit of history. It's somewhat controversial. Most scholars, almost all scholars actually, think that iron making was developed in one place in the world, right here in what is today Turkey, and then diffused or moved out from there. And that's what these arrows show. So it shows this point of origin here in what was the Anatolia Plateau here, and then moved down into Egypt. As you can see the dates here, 670 BC, and then probably down around the Mediterranean, 500 BC, 400 BC, and then on down into sub-Saharan Africa. Um, there are a couple of people who have argued for independent iron making in Africa, including possible dates here in around the Great Lakes area, around what was Lake Victoria, in about 600 BC, which would be obviously before it would have had time to spread down from further north, and then another possible date around the same time out here in West Africa. I'm a big promoter of African innovations, but I'm a little skeptical about this one. No place else in the world did people develop iron making. Um, to think that they did it in two different places at roughly the same time, that's, 2,000 miles apart, seems a little implausible to me. In part because iron making is a huge step forward. Iron itself is a huge step forward, but iron making is as well. Other metals that were made before that, usually something based on copper, were different. And your textbook talks a little bit about this, but making copper is easy, frankly. Copper ore looks like copper. Okay, you pick it up and it looks kind of like metallic copper and has a very low melting point. You can basically put some ore in a wood fire, melt out the metal, and then you're in business. That's not the case with iron making. Okay? Iron making is a chemical process. Right? What do I mean by that? Well, there's a physical process and there's a chemical process. A physical process is like I just said about copper. You melt it, then you let it cool and harden, and you can pound it into different shapes. That's like water. Okay, if you take water and you freeze it, you get ice, right? Okay. If you thaw it, you get water again. Okay, you haven't changed the nature of it. You've just changed the form. Right? That's a physical change. A chemical change is to change the nature of it. And a classic example of a chemical change is cooking an egg. Okay, go fry an egg and then put that thing in the fridge. You're not going to turn it back to a raw egg. Okay, all you're going to do is have a cold cooked egg, right? You can't change back this chemical reaction. You've changed the nature of it. Iron making is a chemical reaction where you need just the right ingredients, as you do with a lot of chemical formula, but you change the nature of it, and there's no going back. So that's why I say it's implausible to me that people are just going to stumble on this and kind of come up with this by themselves. It doesn't seem very likely to me. Anyway, so dates for iron making, probably about 1400 BC in Anatolia, or what is today Turkey, then spreading down in Egypt and Nubia by 1000 to 600 BC, over to North Africa, Morocco, 500, down into West Africa, 400 BC. Once again, potential independent iron making in the Great Lakes area, about 600 BC. I'm not sure about that. And then it spreads to coastal East Africa and then down to Southern Africa in about 400 AD. So, it takes hundreds of years to spread all across the continent, almost 1500 years actually. Because frankly, once people learned how to make iron, they wanted to keep it to themselves because it's such an important thing, but it was impossible to do. So it ends up spreading across the continent and through most of the known world, except the Americas. Okay, prior to European voyages to the Americas, there was no iron making in the Americas. All right. So what is about iron making that's so different? Well, first off, you need a variety of different materials to make iron. First off, you need iron ore, right? And that's a rock, a metal that has elemental iron in it. Then you need charcoal, because to make ore, which is process is called smelting, you have to create a furnace, and then you have to put the ore in there and burn charcoal. And it has to be charcoal because charcoal burns hotter than just wood. All right, that's why you've got charcoal fire for grilling on Labor Day weekend, right? So before you do that, you actually have to make the charcoal, and it takes about 400 kilograms of wood, which is close to 1,000 pounds, to make 70 kilograms of charcoal. And then you put your 70 kilograms of charcoal and 44 kilograms of iron ore into the furnace, along with what's called a flux, which is basically a chemical catalyst, usually calcium carbonate in some way, and the most abundant form of that is some sort of seashells, crushed them up. Anyway, there's a number of different steps then that are involved in this. First off, you have to get the iron ore, which means you have to mine it, you have to do digging. Then you have to make the charcoal, you have to build a furnace, then you have to do the smelting, the actual making of the iron, and then you have to forge or shape it. Okay? So as I said, seems unlikely to me people are just going to come across this, themselves. Especially with, this is iron ore. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to recognize that as the raw material to make iron. Okay, it just looks like rocks to me. Anyway, so you got your iron ore, and this is a sort of a classic furnace design for an African furnace. You've got the charcoal on top, and you see the holes in the side for letting in air, because this is you are burning the charcoal. Of course, to burn charcoal, you need air, right? To burn anything, you need oxygen. Anyway, so it's gonna burn in this clay furnace, and I have a sort of a cutaway drawing here, where you dig into the ground, and then you use red clay from a termite mound around it. In this case, they have charred swamp reeds in here. And then as you build your furnace, you leave holes for what are called tuyères. These are tubes that you're going to blow the air into through those tubes. You have the iron ore here, and then you've got your charcoal here. And you build up a chimney, which is constructive slag, which is the waste product from the last time you made iron, and mud once again from a termite mound. And you make it up in a chimney like you would have a chimney on a fireplace or a furnace or something. Okay, so the air comes in here and goes up that way, right? So you have airflow, because once again you need airflow for the fire. And you start a fire in there, and then you seal it up, except for the tubes here and the part of the top. And the iron ore basically melts in with the charcoal and the flux and changes once again chemically to become raw iron or bloom iron. And then when you're done with that, you take it out, and that's when the blacksmith takes over, pounding it to work out the impurities, putting it back in the fire to burn them off, and then shaping it for whatever tool you want to make. Now, there are a couple of videos you can find on YouTube that show this process in its entirety. The first one, which is great, it's called Smelting Iron in Africa, and here's the link right here. But it's an hour and 45 minutes long. Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you. I know that's too long. I watched it. I thought it was great, but it's a little long. What you could do though is, if you want to dip into it, is I've given you the times here for certain parts of the process, so you don't have to watch the whole thing. Okay, you can watch a minute and 30-second intro, about 7 minutes or so about making charcoal, 5 minutes digging the ore, a couple of sections making the furnace, then the actual smelting, and then forging. Okay, so you can skip through it and kind of show all of the steps, because as I said, hour 45 minutes is a little long. Or you can watch this one. Okay, it's titled Dokwaza, Last of the African Iron Masters. This is actually only about 8 minutes long, and it's a shortened form of a video which is about 48 minutes long, I think, and they've just basically taken out the good parts. So I do recommend you watch this one. As I said, it's about 8 minutes. It's not too bad. It skips making charcoal and digging up ore and really just focuses on the making of the iron. But it takes it through building the furnace and all the way through to getting the raw iron out and making a tool out of it. So it's pretty complete in that way. The other thing I like about this, well, both videos actually also, is they show you the spiritual side of this. Okay, where they show you that making iron for Africans wasn't just a physical thing, okay? It wasn't just like you're working at the steel mill in Gary, okay? Or you're just a, Old West blacksmith or something. It has a religious component to it. You have to, because you're taking something, an element, okay? Or two. You're taking rocks and fire here, and you're changing the nature of something. And when you change the nature of something, you change it spiritually as well. And that upsets natural forces in the world. So not only do you have to have all your materials and the furnace made right and stuff like that, you have to get your spiritual house in order too, or else you'll cause pollution in the world, and it will affect you and your family. So one of the things it shows you is the iron makers, the blacksmiths, before they do anything, they bless it. They pour beer on the furnace, and they put little amulets on the furnace to kind of as a, spiritual protection and so on. And it's interesting. If you watch the longer one, they don't just use beer. They actually, spoiler alert here, they actually kill a chicken. They kill a chicken and use the blood on the furnace, which is a classic way of appeasing spiritual forces. But if you're, partial to chickens or you have a chicken as a pet, I just want to warn you before you watch that one. Okay. All right. So that's just a little bit about iron making. Thank you.